you doing, buddy? Buddy, old pal of mine, chum? Doing well? Well, so am I. So Amazon, in their infinite wisdom, released the paperback for Dracula Theory almost a month early. That's okay. That's quite all right. That's quite all right. The ebook still isn't coming out till September 27th. But hey, if you want to get a copy of the paperback, you can do that right now. That's not what I want to talk about. Of course it's not what I want to talk about. Because I don't talk about those sorts of things with you, Muse. I do have something, however, of import. Yes, indeed, I do. So, every so often, people will reach out to me, most often to say kind words, and every so often they'll say something not quite so kind. But rarely do I get anyone saying bad or mean things. There's no malicious intent coming toward me. Yet, fortunately. Unless that's an airplane coming to drop something nefarious onto my house. Anyway, so I was thinking about this when someone asked me a question. And the question was from another writer. And the question was, you seem to put a lot of yourself into your books, a lot of your opinions and things like that into your books. And I pondered that for a little bit. And yes, it is true. And I know of other writers, some B-list writers, some C-list writers, and on down, even some A-list writers, yes, that get called out for putting their opinions into their work. And I want to address that to anybody that might be listening. I'm going to address that first by creating a parallel. I'm going to ask you a question. Are you up to it? The question is this. Why does Hollywood cast people like Jack Nicholson in a movie? Do you have an answer for that? N'est-ce pas? Of course, out of the gate, you're probably saying, well, isn't he a brilliant actor? Whether he's a good actor or not is beside the point now. Because the reason why Hollywood casts actors like Jack Nicholson is because it's Jack Nicholson. Because they hope that when filming begins, that the director and the cinematographer will capture Jack Nicholson on film. It's not about Jack Nicholson playing characters, it's about Jack Nicholson. They want his personality on the screen. That's why they cast him. They cast him in roles that fit his character. The character of Jack Nicholson. And he's developed this character over the years. I don't know for certain if Jack Nicholson is Jack Nicholson at home. He might be a different Jack Nicholson. He might be Jackie Nicholson or Jay Nicholson or John Nicholson or whatever it is. But the fact of the matter is that Hollywood casts people like that because of their personality. Not necessarily because of their talents, but because of their personality. In some cases, their talents have helped to develop this personality, but that's the truth. Now, we apply that to writers. You've probably heard over the many, many years, of the years that I've been talking to you, Muse, you've probably heard me talk about writer's voice. And the writer's voice is a very unique thing, or it should be a very unique thing. If a writer doesn't have a unique voice, then chances are they need to go back to the drawing board and start to develop that voice. But what is the writer's voice? The writer's voice is that unique way in which a writer writes about a subject. The writer's voice is that thing that delineates each other's work. Shakespeare had a voice, Chaucer had a voice, Poe had a voice, Anne Rice has a voice, Clive Barker has a voice, Stephen King has a voice. They all have their own individual voices. They all have their own individual ways of writing about a subject. And if a writer doesn't have a voice, that means they're writing in a very general tone. They're writing in generalities, maybe not generalities. You can be specific and write without a voice. But what happens is when you write without a voice, a reader will start reading. If you open up a book and you start reading a book written by a writer who has not developed their voice yet, who is just writing in a general wash of words, that's how that book is going to come out. And it's just going to feel like you're reading generic book. Take, for example, textbooks. Textbooks tend to be written without a voice. The publishers of textbooks want their writers to write in a very general voice. They don't want the writer's opinions coming out in the books. They want facts. And you can pick up a textbook and start reading it and go blah, 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 blah. This sounds like just general writer writing general words that just happen to be educational and have a lot of facts in them. But books, fiction, can't be that way. And so, writers of all sorts, it is not only okay to write with your personality, it is generally something we want to see. Well, generally something that is, I can't even think of the word. That's really weird. Encouraged. How could I not think of the word encouraged? It's generally encouraged that a writer writes with his or her own voice. And I know that writer's voice isn't necessarily opinion. But you could think of it as the writer's personality. And of course, the writer's personality doesn't necessarily have to reflect the actual writer's personality. The writer's written personality doesn't have to reflect the writer's personality. But sometimes they are one and the same. I tend to write with my personality. My writer's personality, my writer's voice is very similar and very tightly intertwined with my own personality. And that's a good thing. So when those people come to me and say, why do you write with this particular personality? Because that's me, because that's who I am. And because I know who I am. I've lived with myself for a long, long time. I know that voice very well. I can write in that voice with my eyes closed. So anyone who would think that a writer's personality coming out in a book is a bad thing might want to rethink that opinion. Because if you look closely, you will find writers' opinions peppered through their work throughout history. Read Shakespeare. Almost in every one of Shakespeare's plays, there's a dig at royalty. Shakespeare was so well known for doing this sort of thing. It's one of our ways as artists to kind of chip away at the establishment. Now, of course, not every writer does that. But it's one of our tools. And we use it. I use it. For example, one of the more common themes in all of my books is that the real monster is humankind. Now, whether that comes out in subtle ways or not so subtle ways depends on the book. But Frankenstein theory, Dracula theory, Among You, the iZombie series, Hell's Muse, you can see that theme throughout. And that theme just happens to be an opinion of mine. So, at least in this example, it's coming from a place of truth, my truth. Not necessarily factual truth, but my truth. And I write from my truth 100% of the time. Because I feel like if I'm not writing from my truth, the words I'm writing are detached from my own particular perspective, and they're not genuine. They're not organic from my soul. And if all of a sudden I feel like I'm not writing from an organic place, from my heart and my soul, it's time for me to step back and say, hey, wait, something's wrong here. So anyone that would question why a writer wants to put their own personality or opinions in their books needs to understand that for some of us, to remove that personality or opinion from our writing is disingenuous. And in some cases, simply not possible. I've tried to write without my own particular voice. I've tried to write in a style of another author, just as a test or just for fun. I can't do it. My voice always comes out. No matter what I'm writing, my voice comes out. So, is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? I don't think it's ever a bad thing. I think it's only ever a bad thing when a writer refuses to be truthful to their voice. And it's a good thing when it distinguishes your writing from other authors. I want people to be able to pick up a book of mine, not knowing it's a book of mine, knowing my voice, and be able to pick up a book and say, yep, that's his. Without having to see the cover or read the title. That's my goal. For example, I can pick up any book from a pile. And if it's a Clive Barker book, I can open it up and I can know beyond a shadow of a doubt that it's a Clive Barker book. And I can almost tell instantly. And probably the same way with Anne Rice, with Poe, with Shakespeare. I can tell those authors without knowing the title of the book. And it is my hopes that the same thing holds true with my own writing. Because that's my goal. To be unique. Or not to be unique. That is the question. Anyway, Muse, that's all I got. Because I'm really busy right now. And I have so much to do. Rehearsals of The Mystery of Irma Vep. Whew! It's a lot of words. 2-person show. Whew! A lot of words. I got to go work on them. And then I have rehearsal. And then eventually I'll get back to writing as soon as Irma Vep opens. Anyway, that's all I got, Muse. I hope you, Muse, have the most fantastic, wonderful, truly unique weekend you can. Because, Muse, you are awesome.